It finally happened. I finally played Resident Evil 7 and 8. Pretty late to the party in both cases, but still. And apologies in advance for the stock Resident Evil 7 footage. The plan was to use gameplay from my final run-through for this video, but I quickly found out that on the PlayStation at least, all of Biohazard is considered blocked content. Happily, there's no such issue with Village. Let me start off by saying that I'm old enough to have played the original Resident Evil games when they first came out. And over the years, I've played the shit out of the mainline entries in the series, as well as some of the non-canon entries across multiple systems. Favorite games in the series? It's a tie between Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4. Least favorite would have to be Resident Evil 6, no contest. Was it a good game? Sure. Was it a good Resident Evil game? Not even close. It basically killed the series for me, as it did for most Resident Evil fans. So when Biohazard and Village came out, I didn't much care. Resident Evil 6 had ruined the experience for me, so if that was the way the series was going, I wasn't interested. Also, I'm not a fan of first-person games. As such, Resident Evil 7 and 8 weren't anything I was anxious to try. But then came the talk of remakes, which prompted me to start picking up the core entries in the series on the current-gen consoles. This gave me a chance to add Revelations 1 and 2, and along the way I decided to pick up 7 and 8 as well. So I played through the series again, loving every minute of it, especially the Resident Evil 4 remake. If you haven't played it, do yourself a favor. It's a perfect game. Unlike Resident Evil 6, which I couldn't even bring myself to finish when I reached it this time around. But the journey didn't end there. This time, I had Resident Evil 7 to move on to. Or so I thought. First time out, I couldn't get into it. I mean, the ambiance was great. They really nailed that feel from Resident Evil 1, the isolation, the dread around every corner. All of that was spot on. But I hated everything else about the game. I didn't care for the photorealism. I mean, Resident Evil 6 was shit, but I think they hit the graphical balance pretty well. For the gameplay, I really hated the first-person view and the clunky combat mechanics it brought with it. I also got really tired really quickly of the amount of interactions with Jack early on. Oh no, he saw you. Oh no, he heard you. Oh no, you're out of the little bit of ammo you had. Oh no, he got in the car first. Oh no, you lost him upstairs, dropped down through a hole, and he somehow ported downstairs and burst through a wall in front of you. If you're like me and don't like going through games with a walkthrough video playing beside you, then this forced rinse and repeat approach to the game gets tired very quickly. I'd had enough of the game by the time I reached the incinerator room, which, if you haven't played the game, is barely scratching the surface. And since I hated Biohazard so much, and Village is a direct continuation of that, I didn't even bother with it. A year ago, I got bored, and told myself it was time to try Resident Evil 7 one more time. This time around, I ended up putting it back in the cabinet after the garage fight, which is even less far into the game than the incinerator room. For the life of me, I just couldn't get into it. Then, a couple weeks ago, after having seen the teaser for Requiem and having just finished The Outer Worlds, and feeling the first-person groove, I still hate FPV games, but I decided to roll with it and try Resident Evil 7 one more time. 4 playthroughs later, first for the experience, the second for Madhouse, the third for the remaining trophies, and the fourth ended up being for shits and giggles since I was supposed to use the footage for this video. But as I mentioned, the whole game, blocked. Anyhow, I was ready for Village. As I previously mentioned, the two games are sequential, telling the story of Ethan and Mia Winters, but they couldn't be more different. Biohazard feels more like a spiritual successor to the original Resident Evil games. Suspenseful survival horror, a claustrophobic environment, zombie-like enemies, the keys, the puzzles, even a repackaged Mr. X and Jack. Village, on the other hand, feels more like Resident Evil 4 or 5. More open world, more visible. The outbreak isn't as contained this time, and the enemies are faster and able to reason, just like the Ganados and the Majini. It kind of feels like after Resident Evil 6 shit the bed, the powers that be used Resident Evil 7 and 8 to tell fans that they still know how to do it, with each game giving nods to the older content that made this IP what it is. Are the games perfect? No, but their pros far outweigh their cons. For Biohazard, there are some pretty big plot holes. That being said, you're not likely to notice them on your first playthrough. Is it a good Resident Evil game? Yes. In fact, despite the rocky start I had with it, I'm pleased to admit that Resident Evil 7 was far better than I ever gave it credit for. Does that mean I want more of this format? If we're talking the first-person view, nope, not at all. I'd much prefer the FPV be unlockable the same way you could change filters in previous games to alter the ambiance. Apparently, I wasn't alone in this. Since I had minimal interest in both the games until recently, I had no idea they'd released a 3PV DLC for Village. Fucking awesome. Hopefully Requiem takes a page out of that book and goes back to the third-person view and makes the first-person optional. Honestly, I think it would be pretty sick to have a fixed camera option for some real nostalgia. But that's neither here nor there. Both these games are solid entries in the series, even if they're pretty standalone. I mean, they only barely connect to what's come before, so there wasn't a lot for them to mess up. And like I said, they got a lot right, despite the fact that there's no rocket launcher to be seen in either game. Of the two, in my opinion, Village does it better. They play like two sides of the same coin, each reflecting different eras of Resident Evil history. So what makes Village the stronger of the two? The story, specifically how it revolves around the protagonist. In these two games, we never see Ethan's face, and absent the 3PV perspective, we don't get to see how events affect him physically. On top of that, in Resident Evil 7, we get nothing in the way of what he's thinking at most points in the game. Our only real connection to him is through the dialogue and how he interacts with other characters as the plot progresses. That being said, throughout the entire game, he barely has a handful of conversations. By the end, you really don't know a fucking thing about him apart from that he's kind of an asshole. It doesn't help that his dialogue in Resident Evil 7 is garbage. On your first playthrough, you probably won't notice it much, but on your second playthrough, when you realize you can't skip the cutscenes, it starts to stand out a little more. Ethan's dialogue in Resident Evil 7 is either combative or passive, but no matter what, it rarely ever actually fits the situation or what he should or shouldn't know at that point. And sadly, the more you play this game, that fact becomes more and more apparent. Now, over the years, I'd heard that the general fan consensus was that Ethan was a pretty crap protagonist, but I didn't like the game, so I never paid much attention to any of the details. Turns out, I didn't have to. After a handful of playthroughs, it's overtly apparent. I can't think of a single line he says in Biohazard where I thought, yeah, I'd say that, or yeah, that makes sense given the circumstances. But I can think of a fuck ton where not a word that came out of his mouth made any logical sense. The few times he actually tries to ask something relevant, he allows the person he's questioning to redirect him. By contrast, the bakers seem pretty consistent. Zoe, maybe not so much, but Jack, Marguerite, and Lucas, they're really well done. Ethan, on the other hand, has shit dialogue almost across the board. It either doesn't fit or you find yourself asking, why? From his first conversation in the opening scene, "It's Mia, she's back." The wording is just off. No, she's not. She's not back. You got a cryptic email out of the blue after 3 years of, I'm assuming her being presumed dead, following a video message that said, "Don't look for me." This phone call should be him telling his friend, "I got this mysterious email out of nowhere. It's probably bullshit, but it's Mia. If there's even a chance, I have to go. But in case something happens, I want someone to know where I am. I'm in Louisiana, etc." The story unfolds just like it did. But the conversation here barely acknowledges what the situation actually is. After finding Mia, some shit goes down. His Blair Witch-possessed wife beats the shit out of him and knocks herself out. Does he say something along the lines of, "What's happened to you? What the hell is going on?" Honestly, at that point, even a short and sweet "what the fuck" would have been better than what we got, which was something along the lines of, "What the hell are you?" Again, the wording just doesn't fit. If he's fighting one of the bakers to free Mia, then I could see this line working, but his own wife. The question isn't, what is she? The question is, what the hell happened to her? Before the game begins in earnest, Ethan's hand gets cut off by a chainsaw, and while he's unconscious, it's reattached with staples like he's fucking Frankenstein. And when he wakes up, it works like nothing ever happened. And I shit you not, there's not a single word from our protagonist about this. Nada. As the main portion of the game opens, Ethan escapes the bakers and begins exploring the house as a cop arrives at the home to investigate multiple missing persons reports. Does Ethan tell the cop anything about his missing wife? The message, finding her locked in a cell, her being drugged? I mean, as the player, we know she's not drugged, but Ethan should absolutely be thinking something along those lines. In fact, he should be telling the cop that he thinks he's been drugged too, given he shouldn't be able to rationalize any of the shit he's seen so far. But no, he tells the cop, "Get me out of here, there are people trying to kill me." Even accounting for hysteria? Are you fucking kidding me? If he's hysterical, he should be stammering out a nonsensical stream of any of the points I've just outlined, not saying, "Get me out of here." What about Mia? Not a single word to the cop about his wife, the woman he came here to save. Everything is me or I. Now, one could think, well, she did attack him multiple times, and he in turn fought her off and killed her multiple times. So maybe he's written her off at this point. But then the story progresses just a little bit farther and you find out, no, he hasn't. So why didn't he mention her? At that point, while talking to the deputy, he should have been just as concerned about her as he was about himself, because he doesn't really have any fucking clue what's going on. He literally killed her and she popped back up just fine, and then he killed her again. He should be blabbing about not knowing what's real and what's not. He should be begging the cop to call for backup to save him and his wife. Even the one part of the conversation that kinda works, his plea to the cop about being a hero or seeing Ethan's name on the missing persons list, even that's broken. Because again, at no point does he say anything about saving his wife. And these are just the opening segments of the game, but they set the tone for the whole thing. All of Ethan's major conversations are marred by this shit. It's tonal inconsistency. He's either aggressive when he shouldn't be, or passive to the point of lacking agency, being led from one objective to the next like he's speedrunning the game. If Ethan had asked questions and pushed for answers, it might have occurred to him that he'd been infected the whole time. Knowing that fact makes the whole 2 doses of serum for Mia and Zoe, only to lose one to defeat Jack, a pretty moot dilemma. Since no one ever suggests it and Ethan has no real agency, him being infected never comes up. At all. So really, someone in that throuple was always going to get left behind. Thankfully, Capcom clearly let someone else write Ethan's dialogue for Village. In the first few minutes, not the intro at the Winter's Home, but the opening of the game proper where Ethan is trying to survive the initial events of the village, you get more dialogue and more of a sense of who he is than you got in the whole of Biohazard. Yeah, he's got an aggressive edge, but in Village you see that that's the edge of a fighter, not an asshole. He cares about more than just himself as he tries to help the villagers while trying to survive and get answers about his daughter. Throughout Village, nothing is really about him. He's a father on a mission, and he's got the determination to see it through. Likewise, Village also explains his bravado. Since surviving the events of Resident Evil 7, he's had military training to help keep his family safe. Now his gumption tracks. Whereas during the events of Resident Evil 7, he's just some random everyman who survives by sheer luck and the fact that he's unknowingly infected. Yet he acts like he's Liam Neeson with a very specific set of skills when trying to tough talk Lucas. By the end of Biohazard, I didn't really give a shit about Ethan. I knew how Village was going to end and I was like, yeah, that's a good move. But Village went full circle and made me care about this guy. I was rooting for him, and it makes his end poetic and meaningful. Biohazard and Village were a big change of pace. They righted the ship in a big way after Resident Evil 6 ran it headlong into an iceberg. If you're a fan of the original entries in the series, you'll probably enjoy Biohazard more. If you're a fan of Resident Evil 4 and 5, you're going to get more out of Village. Whatever the case, Resident Evil 7 and 8 are well worth your time. And no matter which one you prefer, both games are a clear indicator that Capcom still has what it takes to make Requiem a hit. And that's it, folks. Those are my thoughts on Biohazard and Village. If you've made it this far, what did you think about them? What did you like or hate? What would you have changed? What are you hoping to see in Requiem? Put it in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.